Your Excellency Abdallah Hamdok, former Prime Minister of Sudan, Dr. Gebeyu, Executive Secretary of the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, Your Excellency Martin Griffith, former United Nations Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, let me first express Kenya's sincere appreciation to IGAD and to His Excellency Dr. Wakne Gebeyu for convening this timely, forward-looking engagement here in Nairobi. I commend you and the IGAD team for your continued leadership and commitment to advancing peace and security, an objective that equally remains one of the long-held pillars of Kenya's foreign policy. Additionally, I warmly acknowledge and applaud the distinguished leaders present with us today. All of you are very experienced diplomats, mediators. Your exemplary leadership and distinguished service in regional cooperation, political transition, and humanitarian diplomacy continue to greatly enrich our collective efforts for peace and stability. To the distinguished delegates and all participants, welcome to Nairobi. Your presence underlines our shared responsibility to strengthen dialogue, mediation, and African-led solutions to the conflicts that continue to affect our region. As a region today, we are currently confronted with a dual challenge to the mediation landscape in the Horn of Africa. First, protracted and mutating conflicts marked by fragmentation of actors are testing the limits of traditional approaches to peace processes. Secondly, rapidly shifting global dynamics and growing pressures on multilateralism are impacting the coherence, predictability, and the effectiveness of mediation efforts. Together, these realities underscore the need to rethink and adapt our approaches. We must therefore pursue more flexible and responsive mediation frameworks tailored to the specific context of our region. African ownership in addressing African conflicts remains essential in ensuring legitimacy, sustainability, and long-term success. Similarly, it is important to enhance coordination among regional and continental actors. Definitely, fragmentation and duplication undermine our collective efforts. Therefore, a more harmonized approach anchored on IGAD's leadership will strengthen coherence and effectiveness in the Horn of Africa. We must also ensure that our mediation processes are inclusive. Evidently, sustainable peace cannot be effectively achieved without meaningful participation of women, youth, and local communities. To this end, IGAD occupies a unique and strategic position. However, there is a clear need to further strengthen IGAD as the primary regional mechanism for peace and security in the Horn of Africa. Accordingly, I wish to reiterate that member states must take primary responsibility for financing IGAD programs in a predictable, adequate, and sustainable manner that enables the organization to effectively discharge its mandate. We value and welcome the support of international partners. However, such support should remain complementary and supplementary, and not foundational. Ownership of IGAD programs, including mediation, must also be reflected in resource commitment by members. While acknowledging with appreciation the contributions of external actors in regional peace initiatives, these efforts should be mainstreamed into Africa-led mechanisms. Safeguarding the integrity of Africa-led mediation requires ensuring that external engagements are aligned with and advances our collective objectives. The evident gap between peace agreements and their implementation remains challenging. Frequently, considerable effort is invested in reaching agreements only for implementation to falter, resulting in the recurrence of conflicts, often with greater intensity. We must therefore prioritize implementation by strengthening institutional support mechanisms. This conference provides a critical opportunity for us to reflect on lessons learned and to chart a practical and forward-looking agenda for mediation in our region. Kenya remains committed to supporting IGAD in the pursuit of sustainable peace and security. I am confident that the insights of this conference will be consolidated into strategic directions for IGAD. Certainly, the discussions will contribute to a more adaptive, inclusive, and results-oriented mediation framework, one that is grounded in African ownership and is responsive to the realities of our time. Mr. Secretary, let me just add 1 or 2 points and then I can step away from the podium. I happened to be present when the London conference on Sudan was held. First the Paris, and then Sudan, and then London. There was also one in Addis, I remember, at the sidelines of the summit. I was not able to make the Berlin one. But let me just give a small insight of the London one. After about 1.5 days of deliberation, it was more on the humanitarian aspects. But after 1.5 days of deliberation, that conference was unable to come up with a joint and agreed communiqué on Sudan. First of all, no players from Sudan were present. And this has been happening in all the meetings that take place. No joint communiqué came out. Why? Because inside the London meeting, external players could not agree. And I was shocked that on a matter of Sudan, and even just talking about the humanitarian effort, without naming the countries, we were faced with a situation where countries were arguing over a text of a communique about humanitarian interventions, and they were busy calling their headquarters to actually decide whether there should be a comma or a full stop in a communique So we left that meeting as a hung meeting. And I was shocked that it was not the Sudanese that had caused it to be hung, but actually external players are the ones that have caused an effort on humanitarian to be hung. The way you have a hung jury, undecided. So, what are we doing? I want to agree that some scholars now in diplomacy are saying that peace has been privatized. Perhaps even commercialized. Because it's about transactions. It's no longer about humanity. It's no longer about lives. So we ask ourselves, when you go to mediation, are you going there as a business negotiator? Are you going there as an arbitrator of transactions? Or are you going there genuinely as a mediator to see peace in the countries that are facing conflict on our continent, whether it is Sudan or any other that is having challenges? Are we facing a new definition of what sovereignty is? We are now seeing in conversations, discussions that actually talk of perhaps possible acquisition of nations or parts of nations. So a completely new dynamic is taking place. Then, ironically again, you find that the people who tend to discredit, and I deliberately use that word, discredit our own African institutions, is Africans themselves. You have the African Union, they make propositions, reasonable propositions, they put them on the table, you refuse to look at them, you refuse to understand them. The same proposition is taken by a friend or a country of the continent. They call you to their capitals. They give you the same thing you refused to appreciate when it was given to you by the African Union or by IGAD. You then sign the same document that you refused to sign when it was offered to you by your own institution. So who really then is undermining the mediation process on the continent? I thought I should be a little blunt so that as you converse on this very difficult topic of mediation, to also look inward and have a serious reflection on how the players on the continent themselves regard mediation, and whether it is us who are giving the advantage to people who have more of a transactional approach, the advantage and the opportunity to drive this process on the African continent. So let's look at it deeply. Let's reflect. The Middle East crisis is teaching us a few things. It's a wake-up call. All of us are facing higher fuel prices. Shortages are beginning to bite systematically in very many countries on the African continent. But I was somewhere else, and yesterday actually, and I was reflecting and saying, Kenya is having a international mining conference as well, and we were talking, and I was saying, can you imagine? South Sudan has oil. Mozambique has gas. Tanzania has gas in the neighborhood. But because of conflict, we can't get the oil from South Sudan or Sudan. And we can't draw the gas from Mozambique. And our traditional suppliers from the Middle East are now faced with a new crisis, and the ships are not flowing or sailing as they should be sailing, so the bite is becoming more painful to the citizens. Can you imagine if this mediation process unlocked all this and allowed Ethiopia to have its fuel from the neighborhood, Kenya to have its gas from the neighborhood, Tanzania to sell their gas to us, Mozambique to do the same? It would be tremendous for all of us and for the citizens of the Horn of Africa and the continent. So these are the issues that we look at and we say, are they really external or are they self-inflicted? Are these issues external or self-inflicted? Today, for instance, after the Middle East crisis and the gas was not able to flow appropriately from Russia to some of the European countries, Algeria has become one of the biggest suppliers of gas to Europe. I think it supplies almost 25% of the gas requirements to Italy today. So there's a lot of potential. We have actually all that can make us self-sustaining. But we continue to engage in conflict. What has happened to the men and women of goodwill on the African continent? They must rise up, they must speak, they must mediate, they must dialogue. And that is what is going to unlock our potential. Ladies and gentlemen, let me wish you an excellent conference and also success so that you can help us step in the right direction. Thank you so much.